Hello, good evening. My name is Amy Larson. I am a physician assistant and I work in the cardiac electrophysiology program at Minneapolis Heart Institute out of Abbott Northwestern Hospital. And I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about my job and fill you in on what my role is like. So, to start, at MHI in the EP program, now just to specify, this is MHI at Abbott Northwestern Hospital. There also is an MHI through United Hospital, which has their own separate program. So I'll talk to you about MHI Abbott today. We have 9 electrophysiologists, 8 advanced practice providers. That includes physician assistants and nurse practitioners. We have 4 EP lab nurses who are designated to helping us fill the EP labs because we are a very busy practice. We cover outreach all over the state of Minnesota. And so these nurses are fantastic at helping schedule our patients for their procedures. They also are available for questions post procedure from patients who are calling in. And then they also help the advanced practice providers with the loop recorder implants and explants, which we will talk about later on. Now, we typically have 3 to 4 EP labs running on a daily basis. That is Monday through Friday. We also have an EP lab running on Saturday. And this requires great support from nurses, lab techs, and a representative from the device company as well. Now, in order to be as successful as this program has been, we have a fantastic pacemaker clinic, and that includes 17 device clinic nurses at this point in time, which helps see patients in the hospital, see patients in clinic, and then also help manage our remote monitoring system so that if there are any concerns or questions about a patient's device from home, they're able to recognize it and triage it and treat it as soon as we can. Now, along with seeing patients all over the state, we have many more clinics supporting nurses and coordinators who, again, help this practice be as successful as it has been. Now, as a physician assistant at MHI, we can have one of 5 different roles on a daily basis, which is something I truly enjoy. And we typically have these roles assigned to us in advance so we know what we're headed into for the day. And this can include either working on the hospital service, functioning in a role of performing procedures, doing same day discharges, functioning as a resource for the day, or working in our outpatient clinic. And we'll go over each of these. Hospital service in the EP program at Abbott Northwestern Hospital is typically covered by about 2 to 3 advanced practice providers on a daily basis. Now, we work to see patients in follow-up who are hospitalized, and we're checking to see how our plans of care are going from one day to the next. We also discharge patients post-procedure the following day, and we are responsible for seeing all of the new consults that come in throughout the day. On average, I would say we see 10 to 15 patients, and all new consults are staffed with a designated consult physician. That consult physician is also available for questions on any other patients throughout the day. So that's nice to have one go-to person who is there to help streamline the service. Now, if we're not functioning in the hospital, a big role for us is to work in the cardioversion program at Abbott. So this is something that we're very proud of, something that I believe is unique to MHI at Abbott. And my colleagues who have been with this group much longer than I have worked very hard to make it as successful as it has been. And right now, all elective cardioversion procedures are performed by the EP advanced practice providers. And this includes outpatients and inpatients. So this is very well supported by an anesthesia team, which includes an anesthesiologist and a CRNA, as well as a nurse through the CV outpatient staff. So it would be an EP, advanced practice provider, an anesthesiologist, CRNA, and a nurse who is in on each of these procedures. Now, if a patient does require a TEE prior to their cardioversion, that procedure is performed by the cardiologist. But as the EPPA, my responsibility is to get the patient ready for the procedure, verify their anticoagulation status, and then get them ready for discharge post-procedure. So we are still involved in that patient stay. If we're not performing cardioversions, a big part of this program also includes loop recorder implants and explants. So as a PA in this program, again, we do all the loop recorder implants and explants that are scheduled in the hospital, which is great. So each of these procedures are also supported by an EP lab nurse, as well as a device representative. And right now we are exclusively using the Medtronic Link. Now, for any of these procedures, we have the Consult MD available for assistance if needed. Now, this is relatively new, something that we have just instituted over the past year, and that is sending patients home the same day after a procedure. So one of our roles could be to get patients ready for discharge. Now, typically, we also help to support pre-procedure H&Ps if an updated H&P is needed for that patient. And then we watch the flow of the EP lab throughout the day to see if anybody is ready to go home the same day. Now, typically these patients are any right-sided ablation procedure, specifically an atrial flutter ablation, an SVT ablation, an EP study. Some PVC ablations are ready to go home the same day. And that is all up to the proceduralist or the electrophysiologist who did the procedure to decide if this patient is a good candidate to go home the same day. Typically, these patients live within about an hour of the hospital, and so they can come back pretty quickly if they have any urgent concerns. We want to make sure their procedure is completed by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because we want these patients to complete 3 hours of bed rest and then be monitored for about an hour after the bed rest has been completed, just to watch their groin sites. We watch their telemetry. We make sure that each of these patients get an EKG before they go home. Now, we also are instituting same-day discharges for device implants. Typically, these are pacemakers and defibrillators for patients who are not dependent on the device, and this would be either a single or a dual lead system. Now, again, these patients do complete a period of bed rest and observation post-bed rest. They also complete a chest x-ray before they go home, and that chest x-ray is reviewed by the proceduralist. Lastly, they have their teaching completed by the device clinic nurse, and they're given a remote monitor to take home with them. The following day after discharge, they'll send us a remote transmission so we can be sure that everything still looks good with the device. In very rare circumstances would they have to come back if we saw any issues on their remote. Now, this is also a relatively new designation for us, and that is the resource person for the day. We created this role because a lot of the times our outpatient clinic nurses needed that go-to person in order to send questions to throughout the day. So they're fielding calls from patients at home who have questions about symptoms, questions about medications, questions about changes to their plan of care. And it's just really nice to have that one go-to person who's available for these questions. Now, as the resource person for the day, we are there to review EKGs, symptoms, medication concerns, and triage emergencies if needed. Lastly, a big part of the resource role is consenting patients for non-conditional MRIs. So at Abbott, patients who have a non-conditional device, meaning a pacemaker or a defibrillator that was not intentionally created to undergo an MRI, We are there to review the risks and benefits with the patient before the MRI scanner to make sure that they fall within our protocol. Um, there also is a nurse, a designated ACLS certified nurse, who is present for all of these non-conditional MRIs, just in case something were to happen. And again, we work very closely with the device clinic to triage these patients as well. Lastly, a very big role for us is to work in the outpatient clinic. And we can work in one of three different ways. One way is to support a physician in clinic. So that would be where I work directly with the physician to support each of those patients throughout the day. That is typically about 20 patients, and those patients are scheduled every 30 minutes. Another way that clinic can function is what we call tandem. So, as an advanced practice provider, I would see my own patients alongside the physician who's seeing his or her own patients. We overlap if we feel it's necessary, but most of the time, that clinic is run in tandem. Lastly, a big role for us is to function in our independent clinics. And that is an APP only in clinic. Typically, those visits are about 40 minutes, scheduled every 40 minutes, and a full clinic would be about 12 patients. All right, so those are all the roles that we fill at Abbott in the EP program. And I've listed my email here for you in case you have any questions. I'm happy to discuss. So thank you so much for taking your time tonight.